Hey guys, it is Esti and Justin from Not For Long Media.
If you like the video you're about to watch, be sure to like the video itself and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it.
Enjoy the video and also don't forget to follow us on our socials at Not For Long Media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
I think first and foremost, we have to start with Alabama being number one. Over the weekend, they beat Georgia, and they beat them convincingly. It was 41-24 Saturday night. It was just nobody saw that coming. The number one team in the country fall into the Alabama Crimson Tide. But I don't know if they picked the right number one team. I don't know if Alabama should be number one. I know to be the best, you have to beat the best. But I was curious if you saw, what happens to Georgia over the weekend and thought that Alabama should have been number one.
Well, I'll say this. There were some people that did believe Alabama would win, and they're Alabama fans. And I'm probably maybe the other one because I didn't watch a lot of college football this year. Obviously, with my current job, we're traveling during the day of those games, or I just want to break and a nap if we're staying at home and not traveling. So I'm not watching the games, and probably not the primetime games because I'm getting ready for the game the night before our game. So I'm watching like the 12 o'clock game as I'm doing a little note study, or I'm eating, or I'm laying down. So I watched the noon games, which are not prime time, usually not the big dogs, right? So I haven't not followed enough. So I was texting family saying, and Sydney's sister's a Bama grad, and I'm in the family group text, and I said, I think Bama wins today, and I think they win convincingly. And again, if I watched all college football this year and I watched Georgia, I probably would say Georgia would beat them because all I've heard is Georgia's defense and what they have on offense and their staff and all these people and their recruiting and their players, their tight ends. I hear awesome things. So I probably would have took Georgia, but there's something about Alabama. I'm a Bama fan. And for no other reason, the fact that they've had success, they've had continued success. The amount of articles about the amount of people Nick Saban has got fired because of how well he's done in the SEC, how well he's done in the SEC West. We know how crazy that is. And it's only getting crazier with the additions of Texas and Oklahoma. We don't know where they're fitting in yet, but assuming the West. So I digress, but I just think Bama is just fun to root for because the fact that it is so hard to win. And I guess I appreciate it more because I've had plenty of losses in my career. It's so hard to win consistently, and especially in college football with recruiting and all these different things. And now name, image, likeness, NIL, which we've talked about here before. So everything's against you to have dynasties, everything. But Alabama just continues to roll and roll and roll and roll. I did see this, Justin. Do you see that Nick Saban, he has to be one of the top 3 coaches in college football? Did I read that stat? He has to, his contract adjusts every time a new person gets paid. He has to be within like 10% of their pay.
I didn't see that, but that sounds like something he would want in there. It takes a lot of pride. Him and Miss Terry down there in Tuscaloosa, they like making the money. So I could see that being a thing.
Well, he sets the market too.
He does set the market.
It's always interesting, right? Like everyone says, like, you got enough money. And I'm the first one to be like, yeah, you do. Like, just cut me a check for whatever and I'll be gone. But there's more to it. There's always more to it. There's pride to it. There's expectation to it. There's a standard to what you do and what you're worth compared to other people. So it's competitive. And obviously Alabama's okay writing that check. It's a no-brainer for what he's made for that university. But I have no problem out with Alabama being a number one. I haven't watched a lot of college football. I think the story of Michigan has been great. I've played with a lot of Michigan guys over the years. And the story is get them out, get Harbaugh out. And that's great. And they're probably right at the time because they can't win the big game against the rivals. I know that's been the stigma of Coach Harbaugh. But I always said back to him is, who are you going to hire? Who are you going to hire that's going to come in and recruit the way that Coach did? He played there. He's been to the mountain in the NFL as a player and as a coach. And then now you're going to say, we're going to bring in someone else who fits that mold, who's perfect for Big Blue. That seems like the perfect coach for there. You had to suck up your 8 and 9 win seasons. And when you lose to Ohio State, I get it, but they stuck it out and they worked them. And now they're number 2 in the country. And they got their hands full with Georgia, and a Georgia team that's probably not happy campers for what happened because they probably thought they were going to roll the tide and then they were going to roll it into the Final Four and have an undefeated season. And they're going to learn a lot from that loss, more than they probably would have if they won. So it may be better for them in the long term in Georgia. So Georgia 3, fine. And then Cincinnati. I'll touch on Cincinnati because as an American Conference alumni, I'm ecstatic for them. I'm ecstatic for them. And it's an awesome opportunity. And they stuck it out and they won the American. And it wasn't always pretty, but it's the formula for what it is. Pretty much you have to have a great year. And then a year later, you're going to be high ranked and you can't lose. So you won't drop in the rankings, but you're not going to beat anybody good enough in the American Athletic Conference to jump you up, to get you these massive leaps you see when these SEC teams win, rightfully so, or a Pac-12 or whatever team gets a massive win, Big Ten. So my point is, I think they're deservedly in the top 4, and it fell into their lap because of people losing. So interesting if Notre Dame would have got in without their head coach that was been a part of a ton of success there. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but what are your thoughts on the Final Four, Justin, as I articulated forever about?
No, yeah, it's a lot to unpack about just 4 teams, but there's so many storylines with each one of them. I honestly think that Michigan should have been number 1. I think their win against Ohio State is probably the best win in college football this year, up until Bama beating Georgia. But I think just the way they win games, they've blown everybody out. The way they play, they have some of the best interior, like defensive linemen. They have a great offensive line. They can run the ball down your throats. I thought Michigan should have been number 1. I'm a Harbaugh guy, but I think the committee, honestly, I think they put Michigan at 2, Bama at 1 to avoid a repeat of Alabama, Georgia. Because if Bama, Georgia were ranked 2 and 3, I mean, so you're going to go from having an SEC championship game to however many weeks away you have to play them again. I think that probably played into it a lot too. And also, I think Cincinnati is such a great story. And we'll touch on them expanding the playoffs. But for right now, them being a 4-team playoff, I'm glad they broke through. The group of 5 conferences, they get no love. And to see one of them finally get up there and hang with the big boys, even though they only had 2 ranked wins and played like Navy and East Carolina half the time.
Temple.
Yeah, Temple. Yeah, we'll talk about them later too. But with that being said, the draw playing Alabama in the first round of the playoff is a tough one.
Oh.
That just reminds me of when Bama played Notre Dame earlier this year, or in January of 2021, and everybody turned it off at halftime. So
yeah, it's going to be ugly.